a minute. Let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The mainstream media, the proud defenders of the unprofitable business of women's basketball, the mainstream media who has spent years trying to convince us that women's basketball is must-see TV instead of what it actually is, which is get off my TV.
That sudden shift in tone says everything. When even the mainstream media stops polishing the narrative and begins admitting failure, it's a clear sign that something has gone seriously wrong. This is the same media that spent the past year insisting Unrivaled was the future of women's basketball, highlighting record investment, celebrity backing, and a roster of the world's best players. Now, those same outlets are writing obituaries. So what happened? How did a league once promoted as revolutionary go from bold promise to struggling to survive in less than 12 months?
It's actually telling us the truth. Last year, they were trying to convince us that Unrivaled was taking over the world. Have you seen these ratings? I haven't seen ratings this high since Beavis claimed he gets nothing but head. Whoopee! But this year, the media is finally admitting what Uncle KC has been telling you guys.
In January 2024, the media sold Unrivaled as a transformative moment for women's basketball. The league launched with enormous fanfare, co-founded by Nafi Sakalya and Brianna Stewart, and backed by major investors. It secured a national broadcast deal with TNT, promised six-figure salaries for players, and unveiled a state-of-the-art facility in Miami. The pitch was straightforward. Give WNBA stars a domestic offseason option so they wouldn't have to play overseas. The media eagerly embraced the story, running glowing profiles and bold predictions. Unrivaled was framed as a game changer, proof that women's basketball could sustain multiple professional leagues and that the sport had finally broken through. The problem, however, was that this narrative wasn't grounded in...
One of the main problems with women's basketball, besides the fact that the actual product is the drizzling shits, one of the main problems, the abundance of unlikable players. Women's basketball, especially the WNBA, it has been overrun with the disease of entitlement. Earlier this morning, I was watching a 90-minute interview that Chris Van Vliet did with Mike Mizanin, or as grown men who still pick their boogers prefer to call him, The Miz. In the early 2000s, The Miz was selected to be on the cast of The Real World Back to New York on MTV. It was his big break into the business of entertainment. He ended up doing a few seasons.
Here's the uncomfortable truth that the mainstream media avoids. Consumer interest in women's basketball is minimal, not moderate, not quietly growing with the right exposure, minimal. Before this is dismissed as hate, look at the evidence. The WNBA has existed for 28 years and has never turned a profit, surviving instead on subsidies from the NBA. Average attendance in 2024 hovered around 7,000 fans per game, even with heavy marketing efforts and discounted tickets. Women's college basketball has been around even longer, yet outside of March Madness and a few major rivalry games, arenas are largely empty. ESPN holds broadcast rights and still struggles to attract viewers for regular season.
He never aspired to be an MTV superstar, which was a somewhat lucrative career at the time. His dream was to be a WWE superstar. When he entered the wrestling business, because he came from MTV, because he was perceived as the reality TV guy, Mike Mizanin was not respected. Just like WNBA players, he wasn't respected by fans, and he damn sure wasn't respected by his colleagues in the locker room. He was ridiculed. He was kicked out of the locker room. This dude was forced to change clothes in the utility closet. He was changing clothes in the same dump that WNBA players use to get ready for their pretend basketball games. He was made fun of. He was told countless times that he would never make it in WWE. He would never be respected because he would always be perceived as the MTV guy. He would always be perceived as the kid who got a lucky break. And
that comparison to the WWE is more relevant than it first appears because Mike Mizanin understood a fundamental truth about building an audience. Respect can't be demanded. It has to be earned. You can't tell people they're obligated to watch your product. You have to give them a reason to care. The Miz entered WWE with built-in advantages, including name recognition and an existing fan base from MTV, and he easily could have demanded top spots and big money. Instead, he spent years doing whatever was asked of him, seizing every opportunity without complaint, and gradually earning credibility with both fans and fellow wrestlers. Now contrast that approach with what we've seen from many WNBA players.
Sports. Unrivaled facing stiff challenges as ratings plunge to start second season. Describing this as a ratings plunge, that is being polite. Because these Unrivaled ratings, they are damn near non-existent. January 5th, Unrivaled had 2 games on something called True TV. True TV? Why is a channel named True TV, which I would assume is dedicated to the truth, why are they broadcasting a league that is make-believe? Why is True TV broadcasting pretend basketball? The 2 games on True TV averaged 32,000 viewers, but that's okay.
Now let's look at the actual numbers, because this is where the situation shifts from merely struggling to outright catastrophic. Front Office Sports published a detailed breakdown of Unrivaled's second season performance, and the data is unforgiving. On January 5th, 2025, 2 Unrivaled games aired on True TV and averaged a combined total of just 32,000 viewers. Not a typo, but 32,000 people watching what was marketed as premium basketball, featuring some of the biggest names in women's sports. The following week,
that Unrivaled was averaging last year. But ratings are only part of the problem. Over the summer, Unrivaled used some of their massive investment from TNT to add seats to the high school gym where all their games are played. And when I say high school gym, that is not hyperbole. I'm not joking around. Matter of fact, describing it as a high school gym is Uncle KC being polite. It's more like a high school library. The gym is incredibly quiet because it was only seating around 800 people. But over the summer, in anticipation for what Unrivaled was calling unbelievable demand for our product, they spent some of the leftover money from TNT that wasn't given to overpaid players who have no ability to ensure that TNT receives a return on their investment, and Unrivaled used those leftover funds to add seats to the library. Instead of seating 850, the library now has the capacity to hold 1,000 people. Unfortunately for Unrivaled, there is so little demand for their product, they are having to put books.
The ratings disaster is only half the story. The other half is even more embarrassing. They can't fill the arena. Over the summer, Unrivaled used part of TNT's investment to expand its Miami facility, increasing capacity from roughly 850 seats to about 1,000. Think about that decision for a moment. After reviewing their first season performance, they concluded that the issue wasn't lack of interest, but shortage of seats, believing demand was strong enough to justify an expansion. That wasn't optimism, it was delusion. Now, even with just 1,000 seats available, Unrivaled is struggling to sell tickets.
Wonder why? Uncle KC will tell you why Unrivaled is struggling. Well, Uncle KC, Unrivaled is struggling because all their stars are injured or their stars refuse to play this season. Stars? What stars? They had Angel Reese last season, and they still couldn't draw flies to a fresh turd. The problem for Unrivaled There is no solution to their problem. The reason Unrivaled is struggling is because there is minimal interest in women's basketball.
The standard excuse when women's basketball struggles to draw an audience is always the same. The stars are injured or not playing. We heard this repeatedly during the WNBA season, whenever attendance dipped or ratings disappointed. Caitlin Clark wasn't in the lineup that night. Breanna Stewart was hurt, or Angel Reese was out. But that explanation doesn't hold up for Unrivaled. Last season, the league featured Angel Reese, one of the most heavily marketed players in women's basketball, along with Breanna Stewart, a multiple-time WNBA MVP. Nafi